let's change the setup.
Yes. Okay. Welcome, Commissioner Deshmani. Good morning. Morning. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Good morning, everyone. It's 8 a.m. and I would like to call the June 14th, 2020 Whatcom County Public Utility District Commission regular meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So the first item on our agenda today is a presentation from Angela Bennick, who's the general manager of Kitsap PUD. And she will be talking about the local utility district model that they use in Kitsap. Chris, do you want to kick this off real quick before Angela gets going?
Well, sure. Kitsap has been doing a particular model to grow their grow their water and telecom business for a long time, and they're very, very good at it. We came across them as a possible alternative model for some of our work. And we wanted to invite Angela here so that she could explain what they do and kind of the pluses and minuses. And plus, she's just a great person to hear from. So with that, I'd like to give it over to Angela. And,
Thank you for that introduction. And I want to make sure you guys are seeing my screen fine.
Yes, we can hear you and see your screen just fine.
Perfect. Excellent. So I am Angela Bennick, and I'm the general manager at Kitsap PUD. And I was the telecom director before becoming the general manager. I have I'm going to walk through a little bit of what we've done with local utility districts, and I'm going to focus on the telecom side of things, because that's really where we've developed this model and expanded what we can do on that. However, this does apply, and we have used it for our water infrastructure since developing it more for telecom. So I'm going to give a little bit of background here. Kitsap PUD is Kitsap County was when we started the largest rural county in Washington state. We're no longer considered rural as we moved past that 250,000 residents mark and are vastly growing, as you are as well. Telecom, in 2003, we started with telecom, and Kitsap County just had challenges communicating within small areas because we had 3 different telephone companies that had little pockets. And so we built a figure-8 backbone infrastructure that connected schools, libraries, anchor institutions, etc. And that was great. And that's how we operated for almost 12 years until we started having people in our boardroom asking for more services for residences. And we hadn't really looked at that before, but then we had we had a need. And so we developed the survey system using COOS. It's a software that has its COOS service zones is their software. And we surveyed the county. Within a month, we had 2,000 responses. It was clear we had a need within Kitsap County for broadband services. And with that, we developed this heat map to the right and really have focused on those yellow areas of the county that don't have service. Our focus, 2016, we turned up our first residential customers, and then have really expanded. And as you can imagine, with COVID, we had more of a crisis even mode of operation, in that we were pushing out as much as we could. And our board even went out and did a $2.8 million bond to expand more services. We currently have 1,375 residents and we are growing. One of the biggest challenges we have is how do we help people pay for this, right? Because Kitsap PUD is small, much like Whatcom PUD. We're not a huge utility district, and we have to work with our local residents to support moving this out. Like I said, we've done bonds, but that's not sustainable to build to every home that doesn't have broadband services. So looking at that, we had done local utility districts for water systems in the past, and we said, well, is this an option for us to do for telecom? So I'm going to pop right into local utilities districts and what we do. Feel free, this is the purpose of this presentation. So if you have questions, you can interrupt me and we can go from there. Okay, so RCW 5416-120, that authorizes public utility districts to form LUDs to pay for the cost of utility infrastructure improvements. It's written a lot more with a lot more legalese, but that's the base of it. You start by getting a petition of homeowners. If 10% of the homeowners sign or less, the commission may deny the petition. And if 50% plus one sign a petition, the commission must grant the petition and form the LUD if it is found to be financially feasible. Now, if you have all the petitioners saying they're willing to pay the amount of the assessment and the cost of building, it's hard to argue that it's not financially feasible. Once a petition is submitted, this is very important for what we do. You may alter the boundary of the district. By altering the boundary of the district, you can either increase the number of people within that district or decrease the number within that district. Once it is formed, to alter the boundary after the LUD is formed, though, you must go to the Board of Commissioners and pass a resolution to alter that. So once all that is done, you have this petition, you hold a public hearing to form the LUD. And all homeowners within the district are mailed details on the LUD improvements and the estimated cost. And the documentation must state that the costs vary from the estimates. Both of those things are really important because even if you have homeowners that don't want to participate, they still need to be mailed all the documentation with a understanding that they will not be charged and the infrastructure will not be brought to their residents. Telecom, go ahead. Yes.
Angela, I have a question. So regarding the petition, obviously it's important that everybody get it. How do you make sure everybody gets it? And then the other thing is that, so let's just say 49 people out of 100 said they wanted the service. Could you redefine the boundary to exclude or change the percentage then? Is that actually acceptable?
That is acceptable because you can alter the boundary before it is formed very easily. The other thing about it is when you look at what you're building infrastructure, so let's take water infrastructure. If you're building a main and everyone down this road doesn't want it, well, you don't have to build that, right? So you exclude that portion. Now, if they are to connect in the future, then they'll have to pay those costs and likely form another LUD to do so. But yes, you can do that. Telecom and water are different in that we stop in the right of way with water, right? Water and sewer, well, actually just water stops in the right of way. Everything else goes to the house. So telecom goes all the way to the house. So if we're building middle mile infrastructure and a homeowner says, I don't want to participate, we build it such they can participate in the future, but we don't take it to their home.
So related to that, does local utility district boundary or envelope create other mechanisms? For example, let's just say we're looking at an area where the envelope is defined under RDOF.
Okay.
and that we pursue local utility district in an RDOF region. Does that then enable us to receive funding for building infrastructure, even though it's would otherwise be blocked under RDOF?
Would it allow you to get funding from RDOF, or would the funding from the homeowners?
From the state or the federal government,
Yeah.
because they currently preclude RDOF regions. And so
Right.
I'm wondering if you call them customers, then all of a sudden, does that exempt you from the RDOF exemption?
So that's a
exempt
little
from
bit
connection.
bigger of a question, because there's a couple things you could do there. One is if the homeowners are stating and can provide some kind of evidence that they're not being served, you can challenge the areas that are excluded. Okay. So that's separately. With the LUD, we have used this for our matching funds for grants. We form the LUD. The LUD then is the matching for the grants. Now, to start and apply for the grants, because you don't want to form the LUD until you know you have the grant, the PUD guarantees the matching funds with the understanding that an LUD will be formed. And so we pass a resolution that states that we will provide the matching funds and that an LUD will be formed to reimburse the PUD. So we have used this for Washington State Broadband Office, CURB, and Public Works Board applications.
Thank you, Angela.
Absolutely. Let me pop into the next one. So I sent this over to Andrew. This was developed, as you can see by the challenging image many years ago. And it walks through, it was developed by Foster Pepper, and it walks through the RCWs and the steps you need to take. So I'm just going to go through it pretty quickly, and then I'm going to tell you how it actually works. Okay, so petition filed, we mentioned that. The petition then comes to the board with a certification that states that, well, the petition goes to the board, and then it's certified that yes, all those people live within that boundary and own the property. So those are keys, that they own the property and are within that boundary. Once that is formed, you prepare a cost estimate. So, or not formed, once the petition is received, you prepare a cost estimate, and then that is included in a resolution to hold a hearing. So the board passes a resolution to set a hearing date. And then once that hearing date is set, all the homeowners receive a notice with legal documentation. We also send a letter on top that is much more easy to digest for many homeowners, that states what the costs are. And we have a document that they can sign if they haven't already petitioned that opts them in or out of the LUD. That is all mailed to the homeowners. So a notice of hearing is published in the newspaper. You hold the hearing, form the LUD. At that time, people can protest the formation of the LUD, but that is the only thing that can be done at that hearing is protesting. Nothing in favor can be stated, because you've already received all the in favors through the petition. We file that with the county, and then we do a final design, go out to construction, follow all the public procurement requirements of construction, and then we pull together all the final costs associated with, so materials, construction, legal fees, costs to finance, all that is pulled together into a final costs, and then the final assessment hearing is held. Again, it's not stated here, but you go through the same process of declaring an intent to hold a final hearing, and documentation is mailed to every homeowner. So how does it work in practice? Homeowners contact the PUD, and the PUD develops a high-level estimate with a proposed boundary. And then community meetings happen. We meet with the community where they're at. We go to homeowners associations. Obviously, the last 2 years, they're all been in Zoom, but usually they've been in someone's house who's willing to host a community meeting within these areas. And there can be multiples of these meetings. There's a lot of questions about it. People will not sign. What we found is they will not sign a petition for us to start this step until they know what the costs are, or at least an estimate of what the costs are. So before, while the RCW assumes everything starts at number 4, we actually have to do quite a bit beforehand before we get to the submission of a petition. We develop a new yes.
It's Christine. I just had a quick question. With step 1, homeowner contacts PUD with request for utility service. So I'm guessing, is this sort of like the community champion that knows about the LUD model? And how are you kind of getting that information to those people in the first place? Are they just people that really follow what's going on at the PUD, or are you doing marketing?
So with that, we actually, when any person asks for a request or an estimate to build to their home, we provide what that estimate is, but we also provide documentation on if you get your neighbors together to form an LUD, this could be less expensive. So we walk them through. We have an email that sends out. We are not doing a lot of public outreach at this time. However, that is in our strategic goals, to do more and to really talk about what we're doing to support the community taking those next steps. Usually it is one homeowner contacting us, and then it goes from there. That homeowner becomes the champion of the community and takes that next step usually.
Okay, great. And maybe something you could get to in this step is there was a question about the size of the LUDs. So I think, could you just pull that up real quick, Angela? Or okay. How many properties are in an LUD? So maybe could you touch on that in this process?
Yeah, so we've done LUDs of so I'm going to call it traditional LUDs, but then we have another model that I'll talk about again, 10, 13 to 130 right now. So our biggest one right now is 130 with the ability to go up to 400. We also know that as we're constructing, and I'll get to this a little bit later, more people join the LUD, more people join the project when they see the truck out there starting to build. But it can be 2 homes. And we do have a process for a single home now. And then anything less than 10, we encourage to do a single home model, and I'll get into what that is. So next steps, we receive a petition. That petition usually does not include 100% of the people within that community. So we revise the estimate, assuming that we're only building to those people in the petition, determine what those costs are, and then provide a new estimate to the community. Sometimes that new estimate makes the petition go away. So there are people, and by go away, they actually ask to be off. They pull their name off the petition, and then you don't have enough to take the next steps to form the LUD. But let's say it didn't. The petition is then certified and provided to the commission. This is how we do it. We do it at the same time. We don't provide a petition that hasn't been certified already. And then again, all homeowners are mailed details on the LUD improvements. With that, we send a document that says, hey, I don't want to be in this, right? And you provide your name, you provide your property address, and then they can just mark a box that says, I don't want to be a part of the LUD. That's really great for us to have that documentation so we can come back. Even if they say they don't want to be a part of it, we still allow them to change their mind and join during the construction process. So we hold a public hearing to form the LUD. Again, only complaints can be voiced. No one can talk in favor. And then we send the preliminary assessment rule to the county. County does all the documentation on the assessments. They are our bank, they file the lien. So we work with them on all of that. They have a preliminary assessment filed on each property. So if that property sells during this time, the new homeowner is notified that there's a preliminary assessment associated with that property. And it does stay with that property versus the homeowner itself. Construction process standard, but the key in the construction process, your project will change in that people will join. And in some cases, a lot of people join. And because there's concerns about us being the government, building into rural communities. And then when they see it's happening and it's not really all that evil, they join in. We only allow them to join back in if it doesn't add cost to the other participants.
Does it decrease costs?
It should decrease costs because
Okay.
you're dividing the total cost amongst all the participants. But if you, in rural areas, it can be a bit challenging. So if you have one homeowner who wants to join that happens to be an underground driveway that's half-mile long, and it would add costs to everyone, you can do a different cost for that homeowner. So you can have different assessments within the same LUD. And we have done this for people who have wanted to join after construction is completed, where we've had to hire a new contractor and come out that would have raised costs. We took the original costs, divided it amongst everyone, and then added those costs to that for those homeowners. So we try to be as flexible and creative as possible to support people in joining. But again, we don't want it to be a penalty to those that originally petitioned to add other homeowners in. That's kind of a big part. Go ahead.
Is there any information in the petition process that one could consider to be confidential?
No, everything provided in the petition process is available publicly on the county website for us. It's just homeowner name, address, and then our construction and costs would be publicly available as well. So there's nothing confidential. As we pull everybody together, the final costs are tallied. I mentioned what those include, and the total costs of construction are divided by the number of participants in the inn. We then present those to the commission, and the commission forms sets a hearing date. We finalize the LUD, and then this is kind of an interesting part of it. Once it's finalized, it goes to the county with the final assessments, and homeowners have 30 days to pay any portion of the assessment before the final lien is placed on those properties. So they can choose in those 30 days to pay the full portion. They can pay half of it. They can pay any amount that they want. And then if they have any remaining balance, a lien is placed on the assessment. It is not, the first payment is due 1 year after that lien is placed on the anniversary of the finalization of that assessment. And it is paid much like a bond and not a mortgage, in that you have a set principal payment that you do and you pay interest on the remaining balance. During any time in the process, you may pay off the assessment without penalty and take those next steps. Oh, I forgot to mention on number 13, we set the final costs, interest rate, and term with the resolution. And once those are set, they cannot be changed. So if a person pays a portion of the assessment, everything else is still the same. They just shorten the amount of payments they have, but all the principal payment they're required to pay is the same. Questions on that? That's also a lot. And I have a form that we use that gives estimates of costs that I can send over that to Andrew.
Angela?
Yeah.
To the extent that that the capital cost is not funded by grants, how does Kitsap secure the capital?
So right now we actually, we use our construction fund. So we have a construction fund that allows us to build out, and then we have a $2 million line of credit. And that line of credit is then reimbursed when the LUD is finalized, and we finance that. So we use both methods. Go ahead.
Have you ever sold bonds to get additional financing?
We do sell bonds for that, but not until after. We sell bonds to finalize the LUDs, but they're revenue bonds. They're not general bonds. And so we do work with bond counsel and create that process once we know the final costs. Now we have gone out to RFP and received bids. We also work with another agency that I'll mention in a second, but Kitsap Bank is a local bank that tends to, that wins every time we go out to bid. And so we work with them for the majority of these projects. We are working with Alpha Ledger, which is a company that is operating a online bidding a process for bonds for public entities. So you can put your project on there and get responses. We have not done that yet with that company, but are getting set up to be able to do so. As interest rates increase, it's more important that we have that double check that we're getting the best interest rate possible for the homeowners, because that interest rate is passed on through to the homeowners for the assessment.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Oh, so just with the assessment on the last slide, what's the average assessment cost? Oh, over, I mean, I know that there's probably a huge range from
there is a huge range,
a few $1,000s to
yeah,
probably six figures, right?
Yeah. So we have only done one over 100,000, but that was a single homeowner who wanted to bring the fiber miles down a road, but they're on average they're 7,700 right now, and that increases as we go more rural. But that's our average today.
It's around 7,000.
Yep.
Okay. And then you can pay any amount of the assessment in the first 30 days, and then the lien is placed on the property. And
yep,
then you begin, is it then monthly payments that it's broken out into?
It's annual payments, but that is only because
Okay.
that is what our county can allow. They were working on a new system that would allow for monthly payments, but it sounds like that has been derailed, and they may have to go a different path. So if your county allows tax payments to be done monthly, they likely would allow assessments to be done monthly as well. Now, we've made agreements with our county because the county is our bank and manages that for us, that we will not finalize LUDs in April and October. Because there is confusion when people pay their assessment instead of their taxes. And so we actually finalize twice a year in June and December.
Okay. And then
Okay.
another quick question. We got one question in the chat. Are assessments deductible on federal income taxes?
They are not, but Representative Kilmer is pushing to allow that to happen. So he was attempting, and I don't know where this is at today, but he was attempting to get a tax credit put in place that allowed for $10,000 a year for 10 years. So you could have credited up to 100,000. But at this moment, no, it is not allowed, or it is not available for tax credit.
Okay.
Yeah. So what do we do with Kitsap? Was there another question?
Kilmer is a federal representative from the House.
Federal. Yeah. Yeah.
US House.
He's on our side. Yes. He's House of Representatives. And I've worked with him locally to push things forward. I just don't know where that's at. I'm meeting with him next month, so I'll find out if that's a next step.
When you do, make sure that he's got the support of Representative Larson and Del Benny too, and if he doesn't, let us know.
Okay.
Because this is relevant to not just broadband, it's relevant to things like solar, community solar, and
It can be.
other
Yes.
community-driven investment.
It really can. And looking at how it's used for infrastructure is key to being able to expand. And I know it was used for electric expansions as well. So that this would be a great model for all of that. LUD is really just a financing mechanism for the homeowners to allow this to happen. I went through the process. It takes time from the petition to formation and starting construction. It's about 6 months. And so it will take time. It will take energy of your staff to be able to communicate and educate what's being placed for what cost. Kitsap PUD, we pass through the interest rate that we finance at plus 0.5% for administration. We finance only for 20 years now. We did when we started this, we did a 6, 13, and 20-year model where 6 was $2,500 and less, and 13 was in the middle, and then 20 years was higher than 7,000. What we found is that most people were in the 20-year, and we were having to pay bond counsel and create and also sell different bonds for all 3 of those entities. They could not be combined. And so we determined that 20 years, we'll just do 20 years combined. If people want to pay off in 6, they can. Value of assessment is less than or equal to the increased value of the property. If you don't have water, if your well has failed, what is the value to bringing in water? That can be pretty high, right? If you don't have broadband services, what is the value of bringing broadband in? That's a bigger question. So we found homes in rural communities don't sell unless they have broadband services. And so how are we valuing that? So working with the assessor on that front as well, using a 3 to 5% increased value of property as a estimate for equating what that assessment is. Okay, so I think I have missed a slide here, but let me just talk about this. We have 1,373 customers today. 80% of those have used an LUD of some kind to connect. So they could have paid it right away in those 30 days, but they've participated in an LUD. We formed 22 LUDs and the largest number of participations is 134. The key for rural communities and being able to use these is a non-contiguous LUD process. And we allow people to participate as individuals on those processes. And then we pool them together and form an LUD. So the non-contiguous LUD is a single homeowner. And we do estimates for each of those individually. We build and we finalize costs for each of those individually. So if we have 100 homes that have done non-contiguous LUDs, we pull those together and we have a single LUD. Each one of those participants has a different cost. It is labor intensive on our side as far as the administration and the paperwork. However, this is the way we've allowed single homeowners who aren't in a community to finance their construction over 20 years.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And that is the majority of what we do. So while a traditional LUD can be one to as many homeowners, there's a city in Ammon, Idaho that's doing LIDs for the whole city, right? So you could do a very large district. There is I got distracted. I distracted myself with Ammon, Idaho, which I think is awesome. And then, being able to pull all that together. But being able to do a single homeowner has been so key for us. And we're finalizing about 300 a year in the non-contiguous LUD model. Homeowners sign a contract with us to participate in a non-contiguous LUD, understanding that it's rolled in twice a year to that. That contract states what their individual estimates are going to be. It also states that by signing this, they've agreed not to protest the formation of the LUD.
Yeah, can't be on both sides of the fence.
Can't be, nope. We did have one customer have it all installed and was using it and said they didn't want to be charged because they really didn't want it. And that's not allowed. In the final hearing, you can only protest the amount of the assessment, not your participation in the assessment or in the LUD. So this is all I have for today. I have sent a lot of our documentation over to Andrew yesterday. So I just did that. So he has a lot of our details of contracts and such that we utilize.
Hey,
Questions?
Angela, I was wondering if you could just share the fact that in your model, and just from when we talked before, that you give LUD participants the option of doing their own conduit on their property, yes, and that can reduce the overall cost. I think you said quite significantly. Can you just walk us through that and how people laying their own conduit has made it more affordable for folks in your service territory? Great.
So 90% of our infrastructure is aerial. However, when we get to rural communities, then you start having underground, especially in properties where private property, where you're constructing down long driveways. So with that, our costs of construction are much higher than a property owner doing it themselves. And so we allow, and many homes now are built with extra conduit. So we will utilize existing conduit if it is available from the right of way to the home. Anything within the right of way we do, but from the right of way to the home, we allow the homeowner to do that themselves. We provide engineering specifics associated with it, where it needs to stub up, and if there needs to be pull points along the way, we support them in all of that, and then we utilize that conduit. The cost difference, so our estimated cost for construction is $35 a foot for underground, and people get quotes from private contractors for 12 to 17. So it can be half or more what we would cost or charge for that construction.
Okay, great.
And
Angela,
yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to ask you about the actual service you provide. I think you described it to us before as lit fiber. And I think it's important that people understand that that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, so we put fiber, we do fiber to the home for all of these. Our demarcation is at the house itself. We don't go into the house. We stay external where our customer premise equipment is. We light the infrastructure from our distribution switch to that home. However, we don't provide the content over that. Our service providers provide the content. We are open access. We do not provide retail services. And the LUD model is really associated with construction only and doesn't address the retail service side. In fact, we have people who participate in LUD and never buy services. And that is unique. It doesn't happen that often, but that does happen. And then the services we provide a lit service, we provide 100 meg, and we provide a gig. And with that, the service providers then compete over what services they're offering with that, whether that's internet, video, or television, or phone. Internet, video, and phone.
I just want to clarify that again. You could not include in the financing model of the LUD actual retail services. Is that what you're saying? You can't include everything up to lit fiber.
Yeah, so the LUD is only for infrastructure. It is not for the monthly service.
So lit fiber is the maximum, but is there anybody doing an LED model with dark fiber?
For infrastructure,
Yeah.
I'm not aware of anyone doing an LUD, but it would be the same if that was the model that you were using to build out the fiber, whether it's lit or dark, would be the same costs to build that out. Well, not quite, because you would remove the equipment.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, that
Okay,
it doesn't affect what service you're providing, or anything over that. It's truly just about the infrastructure and the construction of the infrastructure.
So go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask you, Angela, do you set up various co-location cabinets and facilities, and that's what you pull the fiber to and from?
Correct. And we do an active Ethernet model. So the passive optical network model can be a little bit different in how it's set up, but we do active Ethernet to really future-proof the system. But that does require more of these distribution nodes further out in the community. We started with cabinets and have done a variety of different cabinets. We are now building buildings for housing the materials. It is easier. The cabinets get overwhelmed pretty fast with the amount of equipment you're putting into them. So and right now we're working with a company out of Oregon for prefab buildings that come with air conditioners and all the electric already wired. They come in, we have the slab set, they bring those up, and then we set that on. Now, we own quite a bit of property throughout the county, so we try to place those in our properties, but are also working with our different jurisdictions with ILAs to have property to place those.
So if you have a building with air conditioning on it, I'm assuming there's some O&M costs for that if you don't also supply the power. So how's that defrayed over time?
So we charge that with our wholesale rate to the end users. So our wholesale rate includes all costs of operation and is running right around, well, it's $42 and $52 a month, depending on if it's 100 meg or a gigabit service. And because 60% are buying the 100 meg, we run right around $45 a month average for each of those connections. And that covers monitoring. It covers our customer service time, even though we're not the retail provider, because we've been engaged with these homeowners throughout the process of LUD formation. We tend to build relationships, and being the public utility district, we're here. So we do have a customer service aspect that continues on. But all those costs are rolled into that monthly charge.
So you have an emergency response capability. You can roll trucks over the weekend, and you have staff for that and equipment.
We do. We do. So if a single homeowner goes down over the weekend, we do not roll a truck unless it's a hazard affecting the number of, or affecting the community and can cause damage to either infrastructure or hurt someone. And that could be like just a line laying across a road along those lines. However, if we have any of our middle mile go down or our business customers goes down, we do roll on weekends for that. We work with NOAANET, and NOAANET provides our call monitoring during the night and also a degree of escalation. So they determine whether or not it's a power outage or the equipment has failed, what equipment has failed, and then they call our on-call staff, which is actually field techs, not engineers. We do have an engineer and are hiring another. We like to have 2 engineers on staff, but they call the field tech, and then if it's not physical infrastructure, then the engineer is escalated to.
Thank you.
Yep.
Could we pull up looks like there's some questions in the, okay. So we've got, please describe the number of ISPs available and range of cost, how to ensure quality of service by ISPs.
So we have 5 residential ISPs right now. Costs are very competitive. Once we had 2, when we had 1, it was higher. Once we had 2, all the costs dropped. And right now, 100 meg bit service is running right at $65 a month, and a gigabit is running at $85, I believe. They offer things like no contract is higher, 2-year contract is lower. So there's all these different permutations of what they offer with that service.
So is that 65? Sorry, is that 65 plus 45, or is that 65 inclusive?
65 inclusive to the end user. So really on our network, we have 5 customers, those 5 retail service providers. We are serving 1,300 through those 5 retail service providers. How do you guarantee the quality of service? That is actually a hard one. And we needed to be able to identify the quality of a provider and have some stick, right? It couldn't just have all carrots. And so in 2018, the legislation allowing Kitsap PUD to become a retail provider in the event that there was no quality service provider. So that's key. the quality, we were able to define what quality meant. And we created a service level agreement with all of our retail providers and have required them to sign that. The biggest key for this is they're required to provide 75% of what they're offering at any time. So if you're buying a gig, you will be guaranteed to have 750 megabits upload and 750 megabits download at any time. If they, this was all in the legislation, it has all now been striked as after 2021, that gave unrestricted retail authority. So this is no longer there, but we, in the legislation, we would work with the service provider. They were given 30 days to remedy and become quality again. And if not, we would then provide that retail service. So that is our only avenue to ensure that the residents who were spending $10,000 to get fiber to their home would have a service provider. We still have that SLA in effect. There are a lot of other aspects to that SLA than the speed of service, but the speed of service and the up to wording is pretty much what most people are concerned about, taking those next steps. I hope that answered the question. So the conduit.
We have one more question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you see it, Angela?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Okay.
If the customer runs the conduit, does the PUD own the fiber to the house? Oops, now I don't have it. So yes, even if the customer puts a conduit in, the PUD still owns the infrastructure all the way to the home. And that's how residents want it, to be honest, because if you dig it up, you're going to want us to be the ones repairing it. And that is the case. In fact, we're dealing with a homeowner who dug up their conduit just over the weekend, and we will need to pull a new drop fiber into that home and repair the conduit. And we do that. We, if there is a high cost and locates weren't done, we will go back to the homeowner for those costs. But yes, Kitsap PUD does own the infrastructure all the way to the home. And that is in our document. We have people sign that allows us access to private property and defines all of that. It also defines in that their tampering costs can be charged if the fiber is broken because it has been tampered with.
Well, I know we have you for a few more minutes, Angela. So I'll just have one more question to clarify. So the average cost for gigabit service, you said, is $85.
Yes.
Is that right?
That is correct.
But then if the average assessment is around $7,000 over 20 years, that works out to about $29 per month. So are we looking at, so would average monthly costs, once you add in the assessment cost, it's around 115 based on my math here.
Yeah.
Is that kind of how, okay.
So
that makes sense.
They would be additive. Yep. So you would have the LUD costs, and then you would have the service costs, and you would add those together if you wanted to say, this is what my overall costs are going to be, and compare that to per month and compare that to what you're paying now. We tend not to do that for homeowners. We encourage them to do it themselves, right? And do that comparison. But it's really important. There's no obligation for homeowners to participate. This really needs to be a community-driven project and not driven by the PUD. And so we don't want to feel like we're trying to convince people to participate. We'll ask questions. If homeowners within the group like to share those things, like, hey, I did the math, I'm going to save $20 a month. And to be honest, personally, that's what I did. I was like, wait a second, if I do this fiber, I can come off Comcast and save money. So, and I did that. But yeah, it's really important that you are not in a situation where you're selling. You're just asking questions. You're answering questions. Sorry, you're answering questions of the community group that wants this. It does look like there's another question. How long is it from asking the LUD to using broadband services? That depends on the construction, but it's at least 6 months to start the process. And then depending on the construction, it can be 45 days to 90 days. We turn people up. They're using the service well before we finalize, because before we finalize, we have to make sure all documentation has been filed with the state, and the 3 different state agencies have approved that all prevailing wages and such were paid. So it can be a long time after the finalization, or after homeowners are actually using the service before the LUD is finalized.
Great. Well, Angela, I know you have your commission meeting in
Yes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
So, and they're having their first in-person meeting
Yes.
in several years. So I want to let you go and do that. But just wanted to give you a big thank you from the Whatcom County PUD and our
thank you.
community. And you all have been so helpful.
Yeah, and the commissioners as well. Please pass our thanks on to the whole commission at your meeting. How much
I
we
will.
appreciate you.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angela.
All right.
Thanks
Have
so
a
much,
great,
Angela.
great Tuesday. Enjoy your
Hopefully see you in
strategic planning.
July.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you won't. I'm actually traveling, so, but unfortunately.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
Commissioner, I'd like to suggest a short recess and
That sounds great. Let's do that. And then we'll reconvene. 5 minutes. Does that sound good to everybody? Okay, perfect. We'll see you 9:02. Let's say that. And then we'll reconvene.
For the strategic planning section, Commissioner Murphy isn't here.
Right.
In any capacity. So I'm concerned about that.
those changes to the agenda.
So, Chair, I have just some concerns about item 6A,
Mm-hmm.
the strategic plan update work session. And the reason is because Commissioner Murphy is not present for this meeting. And I'm open to everything from a reduced strategic plan discussion to maybe scheduling a special meeting for this purpose and making sure that works with Commissioner Murphy.
I think, why don't, I completely agree. But I think let's keep it on the agenda and possibly use that time to talk about calling a special meeting. And I see Jim Darling is on, and we could kind of talk about what we might be able to achieve, if anything, today, given Commissioner Murphy's absence. Does that sound okay to you, to keep it on the agenda, but talk about the need to reschedule when he's here or call a special meeting?
Yes, and I think that, I guess that's maybe not a change to the agenda, just a recognition that we may use significantly less than 90 minutes today.
Okay,
So commissioners,
yeah,
so it was an inadvertent oversight on my part. I did not include a broadband update as part of our normal old business. I would propose that we simply add that back in, perhaps make it
6B.
8A or something, if you want to put
or
it there.
6, we usually do it under old business.
We
So
usually
6
do.
6B, should we do,
We
or
could.
6A?
Um,
Okay.
Whatever you prefer. I would
Do
just,
you-
yeah.
that, Commissioner Deshmani, would you like to, I could entertain a motion to
Yeah,
approve that.
I'll make a motion to add item 6B, which is broadband update.
And I guess I have to second. So I'll second that, and we have a motion and a second. All those in favor to add broadband program update under old business, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you. And then we still need to go ahead and approve the agenda too. So
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda as with the modification.
and I'll second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Great. The next item on the consent, the next item is the consent agenda, which is the approval of the meeting minutes from May 24th and the approval of claims for June 14th.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
And I will second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Great. So now we're on to public comment, and each speaker has 3 minutes. And we also do a public comment at the end of the meeting as well. So if you have a comment, please raise your hand. Oh, Jamie, and then can we move Jamie to panelist so he can speak?
Yes, I'm trying right now. The option
Thank
is
you,
not,
Mike.
the option's not popping up for me for whatever reason. And can you try to do it? If you hover over his name over on the right there where he's an attendee, it should pop up a box that says allow to speak.
I won't let you.
No, it's not working for me either.
Can you try clicking on attendees and then,
It is on the TV.
Yeah.
He's on.
yeah.
It is on attendees. It should, like right now, I'm hovering over his name. And it should, here, let me try something. Ann.
Jamie,
If you could type the question in the Q&A, that would help. Or if Jamie could type in the question in the Q&A until we get this figured out.
Or comment.
Have you tried right clicking in?
I'm doing that.
Oh,
Hmm. Sorry, never had this problem before. There's the question. Oh, okay. I don't know
Is
what's going
there-
on.
I could call Jamie.
Yeah,
Jamie, is it okay if I call you? And you can speak your phone in?
Here, let me, oh, never mind. I know what I need to do. Hold on. Oops.
Okay, great.
I was doing it from the wrong spot. Sorry.
oh, there we go, there's Jamie.
There he is.
Jamie, you're muted.
There we go. Now
Yep.
my video's working and I'm unmuted. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm extremely excited hearing the presentation that Angela gave. I had spoken over a year ago and said, you know, there's two ways to do things: by trial and error, where you make lots of mistakes, or where you can use a recipe. I think what we've seen today with Angela is really a recipe of how we could do broadband. I am a co-owner, along with my wife and son, for property on McGee Road, which is in the dead zone of internet service as identified by the state. I would love to petition to be an LUD, and I know that there are several other areas, such as the Ravencrest community and others, that would be very excited to try to move forward and help be pilots for using LUDs to try to use this. Like I said, I found the presentation exciting because of the possibility of actually getting connected ourselves, but also I could see how this could be just used throughout Whatcom County to really provide affordable broadband service. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Jamie.
Jamie.
Any other public comment?
Don't see any.
Okay, and as I said before, we do another public comment period at the end of the meeting, so feel free to provide your comment then. So moving on to old business, let's do the broadband program update, which we just added to the agenda. Andrew, do you want to kick that off, or will it be you, Chris?
Let me kick it off first by saying that tonight we have our fiber open house at the Ferndale Community Center. It's also, I know all of our commissioners are invited to that, and it is
I'm attending.
a public meeting. So we've already arranged that. I think, you know, those who have questions about our process and everything that we've got underway now with the port, this is a perfect time for folks to come and listen to what's going on, find out more about it, and talk to all the people who are directly involved with it. So you'll probably never again have a chance to have all the right people in the room at once. This is a great time. If you're at all curious, show up and talk to us.
Great, yeah, and I'll be there as well. So, and I think there'll be at least, several folks from the port there.
Be some folks there, yeah.
Great.
And so with that, I'd like to kick it over to Andrew for our normal broadband update.
Good morning. Thanks, Chris. Incredible presentation from Angela. Thank you for taking the time on the agenda to have her come speak.
Andrew, we're getting a lot of feedback from you. Do you want to just come into the commission room?
Yeah, I'll be right over.
Okay.
And commissioners, I'll be right back.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about those technical issues I keep having. So big thanks to Angela. And I was just saying, thank you for taking the time on the commission meeting today to hear about the LUD model. We're really excited to drill into those details. Angela is sending over more in the weeds details above and beyond what she gave at the presentation today. So staff will be looking further into this along with myself and Chris. We talked about the open house tonight. Really excited to see everyone there. Tell your friends, family members, anyone who wants to come. Like Chris said, this is a great opportunity for folks to get all the team cornered and ask us all your hard questions. On the curb feasibility study, things are moving right along. There's still a lot to do, but part of the components of the deliverables needed to complete the curb feasibility study is community outreach. And so some ways that we are doing that includes the open house that is happening tonight, as well as a community survey that is posted on both the PUD's website and the port's website, and that's open until the 20th of this month. So if you haven't taken the survey, feel free to also share the news about the open house and the survey that we're conducting now. And the Port of Bellingham created the survey, and they're helping with getting the word out as well. But the staff there have told me that we have hundreds of responses so far. So we're excited to get those tallied up and figure out what we're looking at.
Do you want commissioners and staff at the PUD and the port to respond to the survey too?
Please do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It's for everyone. So we're working through, we've identified, let me back up. Today is actually a really big day because the notice of funding opportunity is dropping from the state broadband office. So staff will take the time to read through that diligently and make sure that everything we've been preparing for up until this point fits within the guidelines of those grants. So what we've done so far is we've identified some project areas that we think will be in the ballpark of what's available on these grants, or this grant specifically, which is about the $20-25 million range. And since we've drilled into these project polygons, which we can talk more about tonight at the open house, we're starting to put some financials together with our consultants, Noanet and Petrocor. And we're less than a month out from having those, as we had originally promised a couple, many meetings ago. So we'll have that in time for a submittal of the WSPO grant by August. So things are moving right along. We'll have a finalized study, with a bow wrapped around it in the fall time. So other than that, I think that's what I have. I'll kick it back to Chris.
Any preliminary insights on what you're learning from the survey so far?
I don't know. I haven't seen any of the responses yet.
And we're kind of reluctant to release any information or even look at it ourselves. We just don't want to influence the outcome. It's more,
Sure.
let's just shoot it out there. And then when we close it, then we'll start tabulating everything and find out where the community sits.
So we have responses on the order of a few hundred at this point. Is that what we have?
I think we have a few hundred electronic. I don't know how many paper.
I don't know either.
When you say paper, how did people receive paper copies?
We mailed about 500, didn't we?
We
Out
did.
to various people.
We direct mailed to 500 constituents with
Okay.
a copy of a hard copy survey with invitation to the open house. And the survey, they can fill out paper form and they can bring it to one of the libraries
How
where
did
we've
you
set
pick
up
your
boxes.
500 that you mailed to?
Sorry.
How did you pick the 500 that you mailed to?
It's random in the sense we think we know where there's areas that have poor service. And so we then took that and randomly sent out 500 plus surveys.
And that was service levels determined by all the studies that you put together.
Yes.
So these are unserved and underserved from the federal perspective. And so that was the target
Okay.
audience.
Thank you.
Yes.
I mean, the thought was that they might not have internet to fill out the survey, and we sure wouldn't want to miss those folks because
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. Do you have a little bit of an outline for tonight's event?
So what we have is an open house, Commissioner, and I'll say a few words. Rob may say a few words kind of welcome and kicking it off. And then we're going to break up into small areas where, for instance, Andrew will be our GIS expert. Gino will be talking about grants, and Rob and I will be there talking about general process. But the idea is for folks really to ask the experts. That's kind of what the open house is all about.
Okay.
So not a huge agenda, this is really an opportunity for folks to come in and ask what they want of the folks who really know what the answers are as far as we know them.
All right,
I have a little update under broadband, if it's a good time for me to do that. Okay, so a few meetings ago, we talked about Dig Once and the PUD's role on the Whatcom Council of Governments Transportation Policy Board, which we are non-voting members of. And I'm our representative this year. And since Dig Once is so intertwined with transportation policy, the idea was to bring this up with the COG, as it's called. And so Councilmember Kaylee Galloway has also been very involved in Dig Once, and I think has talked to you about it, Commissioner Deshmani. But I reached out to Bob Wilson, the executive director of the COG, and Councilmember Galloway, Bob Wilson, Chris, and myself had a meeting with him on June 1st to talk about a countywide Dig Once policy and kind of convening stakeholders through the COG to begin talking about drafting county code around it. And so Bob was really receptive. He said that, you know, this is the perfect policy to come to COG, thought it was a common sense policy. We talked about next steps, and so Dig Once will be on the July 13th Transportation Policy Board agenda at the COG. And there's only a few meetings every year, so it's kind of a big deal that it's on the agenda for July. And I've invited both Andrew and Chris to that meeting. Chris will be,
I'll be over in Wenatchee.
but might be able to join remotely.
Might be able to get there, yeah.
And, you know, again, the PUD doesn't own roads, so we would not be writing the Dig Once policy. I saw that Councilmember Galloway was on. I don't think she is anymore. But I think she talked about, you know, the hope that there could be some draft code potentially by the fall. But, you know, there's a lot of different players that need to be involved, from the small cities to the Washington State DOT, to the COG, and then also kind of talking about what role the port or the PUD could play. So that's just kind of in process right now. I'd say another kind of big, you know, modest step forward is that we on June 8th had a COG meeting, a regularly scheduled Transportation Policy Board meeting. And the focus of that meeting was the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan, which the COG updates every 5 years. And there was an amendment made related to adding Dig Once. And I'll just read that out loud. And it is, work with the Port of Bellingham, Whatcom PUD, Whatcom County, cities, and the Washington State DOT to develop a Dig Once policy to coordinate construction projects with broadband deployment. So that was officially added to the 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan. And then the other thing is that there are some sort of state legislative issues related to broadband. And Councilmember Galloway and I have a meeting with Senator Lovelet on June 29th. And Andrew, I think, will be joining me. I just sent him a meeting request yesterday. And then the Anacortes City Council member, Bruce McDougall, who's been very involved in their broadband work, is also joining. But the goal of that meeting is just to talk a little bit about the upcoming legislative session and a few different items related to broadband, including potentially the role of the UTC with things like load testing and how contracts are formed. So just kind of trying to move that forward with my role on the COG. And the other really great thing is Bob Wilson, the executive director of the COG, sent out an email to all the sort of sister agencies around the state to try to get some other information on Dig Once policies. And there's been some good stuff sent back. So Chris, anything else to add to that, since you were on the call with me with Bob and Kaylee?
No, I think it was we touched on a lot of issues, and I thought it was a very productive call. And I'm happy to see the role that we're playing in it.
So on the subject of Dig Once, so I'd like to make a comment. That's that I've had conversations with public works people in all the local governments, small cities, Bellingham County, over the last couple of years. It's fair to say that there is a lot, that sounds like a great idea, but then when we talk about details, a lot of concerns from all the public works directors. As a result, that makes it clear to me that pulling together Dig Once policy on a countywide basis is going to be hard work.
Yes.
So COG is beneficial, and I very much support your work and I applaud it. Is beneficial because it brings all the parties to bear. But COG also has this, can take this responsibility with absolutely no authority. So that's also a recipe for not getting something done. When you have a lot of responsibility and very little authority. And so one of the things that will be important to manage in this process of developing a Dig Once policy, which I don't think will be fast. I wish it could be fast, but I don't think it will be fast, is the ability to document the concerns from the public works directors and then have a discussion with policy leaders, which includes you, which includes Kaylee and others as well, from perhaps from some of the cities, small cities as well, to identify what their concerns are and alleviate those concerns. For example, for public works directors, for people who manage public works, their credibility, their ability to look good in the capacity of doing their job means delivering on time, means delivering on budget. And every complexity issue that gets introduced in the public works project makes delivering on time and on budget more difficult. So naturally, no public works director wants to take on a unfunded mandate, which could potentially risk the completion date as well as the completion budget for the project. So this is a general statement. And so we have to come up with solutions for that problem, so that we take that concern into consideration. I've got ideas for that, but they don't need to be my ideas. These things need to be addressed. Otherwise, we'll have a policy that is either too diluted to actually direct action, or we will have a policy that's not abided by, which is also problematic, or a policy that makes the causes public works leaders to underperform, which is also not what I want to do. So I just wanted to take that one example as well as this point into consideration.
I expect the conversation at the July 13th COG meeting about this Dig Once policy to be a very rich discussion and agree with you that there's a lot of details that are going to need to be worked out. And I'm guessing, that it will be a long process.
And one of the things that we talked about was a lot of these folks aren't going to respond to anything until they see some actual code language. And that was just a blunt recognition. And the county recognized that one of the roles they could play would be to provide model ordinances. And that's why it was important that they went out and collected a bunch of these ordinances from different places. I've worked in dig once and moratorium jurisdictions since the early 1980s. This is not new. There are hundreds, thousands of them across the country right now. And there's some great examples of how to write code so that it is very workable and very functional. And you're right, the devil's in the details. But I think that everybody in that meeting kind of recognized that. And the issue is, how do we frame this up so that it's easier for both the county and the local cities to figure out how to internalize this and make it happen. So you're right, it won't be easy, but there's a lot of work that can be done to make it easier.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm glad we're all on the same page on that. And another thing that you may or may not have mentioned is that Kaylee's also trying to raise this issue to a state level and seeing what the Department of Transportation at the state level can do. I mean, this they have taken quite proactive steps recently regarding electric vehicle infrastructure at, for example, rest areas. So something suggests to me that if there's all this I-5 related infrastructure happening, that perhaps there's some opportunities for coupling that with Dig Once activity as well.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely not too soon to begin thinking about what we could do in the legislative session on a number of broadband issues.
I think the DOT has a standing representative at the COG, and I don't recall if they're a voting member or not, but that was one part of the discussion was how to get them actively involved and what role they should play and all that.
I have a separate item under broadband update. Go for it. I, out of curiosity, I reached out to Wave, which is now goes by the name of Astound, to learn more about what they're doing in Thurston County. You all may know, I think in some of the news notifications we get, Thurston PUD decided not to participate in their county's broadband activity. They did a study, a year-long study. One of the most interesting things in that study is that approximately 3/4 of respondents say they weren't happy with their service. But Thurston decided that because of this, the partnership that Astound is entering into, formerly known as Wave, is entering into with the local tribe in Thurston County, which is Nisqually. I think, can someone help me with that? I believe it's Nisqually. As the public partner in a public-private partnership, that Thurston PUD is going to stay out of it. And what the tribe is going to do is creating a department, or has already created a department, which will take on the task of installing and maintaining fiber on behalf of the private sector partner, which is Waves, Astound, formerly known as Wave. And it's an interesting thing. I plan to have a follow-up conversation, and I'd like to include someone from staff in that. Maybe Chris or Andrew, you can follow up with me, let me know. Maybe both of you would like to be in that. I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss it in more depth. It was just a very introductory chat I had yesterday. And to see if there's beneficial partnerships that we could foster between telecoms and the tribes. It's a little strange for me to suggest this because to some degree this is, one could see it as overlapping our PUD's role, but I think that I'm really on the front end, I'm looking at the more the merrier. The more collaboration, the more work happening in a community, the better. And in fact, a big part of what PUDs are trying to do is trying to get more activity, not just of ourselves, and in the way that the Kitsap does is essentially foster more competitive activity, more private sector activity. I think that's in the community's interest. So I'm not suggesting that we do it, or we can't do it anyway. We would need a travel partner, but I certainly would like to have a follow-up conversation so we can collectively ask some good questions about what the potential is for this in Whatcom County. So you don't have to respond to me now. We can follow up later, but I'd like to set up a meeting to that effect. So that's about it for me on broadband.
Great.
I have nothing else on broadband.
Okay, well, and Andrew,
I just have some hard copy surveys if you want them for any purpose.
I'll take
Otherwise-
one.
so just reminder to everybody that the open house is at 5:30 tonight at the Ferndale Chamber of Commerce. So
You'll have more tonight too. right,
hope to
Andrew?
see everyone there that is interested in learning.
Andrew, we'll have more
about-
there tonight if people want to take them live
So more what?
of the surveys.
Yes, we'll have hard copies available there.
Great, yes.
And
Because
just to-
sometimes people may just prefer to
Right.
do it right there
I agree.
instead of hassle with another email.
And just a reminder, the location of the community center is 2007 Cherry Street in Ferndale.
Great. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the strategic plan update work session. And I see Jim Darling, you're there. Do you want to unmute and turn your camera on and join us?
Here we go.
Hello.
Great. And so just since for the benefit of the members of the public, Jim Darling is a consultant with Leeward Strategies that has been helping us with our 5-year strategic plan that we are currently working on. So Jim, take it away.
Well, I heard that Commissioner Murphy couldn't make it today. You know, what I might suggest is I could walk through this and do it, take as much time as you'd like to. And then I will forward this to make sure Ann and Chris have it. And if you would like, I could review it independently with Commissioner Murphy at some point. Chris, I think we had tentatively scheduled a June 28th session to go over it again. So I could get that done between now and then and get comments back from the commission, and then we could look at it one more time on June 28th. That works for the commission. So
I think we were going to have a special called meeting on that, and we're targeting July
Okay.
5th to do that.
okay.
And we haven't called for that meeting yet, so I'm perhaps out in front of my skis.
Yeah, but that we were gonna make a motion today to do a special meeting on July 5th.
Was that already in the works?
I don't,
Just preliminary discussions, not.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
The idea was to have a meeting where the commission had an opportunity to look at any input that they had and the public had before final approval, which was scheduled for the first normal meeting in July. So we're trying to squeeze an extra meeting in for that.
and if July 5th doesn't work for you, we could aim for, we don't have to have it on a Tuesday. There's no reason we have to have it on a Tuesday. right?
No, and the, the other thing is that this isn't something you have to decide today. I mean,
Yeah.
you can decide to have a special called meeting, we can figure it out and then do the public notice later in the month.
I'll
Okay.
make it work. It's a priority, obviously, but
Great.
right now I can probably make July 5th. I prefer not start at 8.
Okay. Well, my preference today, Jim, and Commissioner Deshmani weigh in, of course, is that I know you've put a lot of work into the slide deck and kind of getting the things prepared for us today. So, I mean, I would love to get an update, and then, this is recorded, and if you're able to do a one-on-one session with Commissioner Murphy,
Yeah.
to get him up to speed. I think that would be, we don't need to take action today on anything other than possibly calling a special meeting. So does that work for you?
That works for me.
Okay.
So should I
Okay,
make a
so-
motion to that effect
To a motion
for a
to,
special meeting?
sure, we can take care of that right now. Should we? Yeah, what time do you want to do it?
Peter, do we need to pick the exact date and time for the special meeting, or can we say pick the date?
Well,
And-
you eventually need to provide 24 hours notice at least of the date and time.
Mhm. Yeah, but I mean, do we need to do another motion somewhere between now and July 5th then? I guess we will have time to do that. So maybe we don't need to make a motion now. We can make that motion at our next meeting.
Or you could just make a motion for the general manager and staff to make the arrangements and
Right. Yeah,
then we'll take care of it.
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, okay, I'll make a motion for to call for a special meeting, the staff to make arrangements for when that can be sometime in July.
I'll second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
All right,
Aye. The motion carries.
that was that kosher?
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, so we have a special meeting sometime in early July to keep working on the strategic plan, hopefully with Commissioner Murphy in attendance. And then Jim, I'll let you take it from here.
Do you need the chance, I think, Peter, to make it official? No.
Let me share my screen.
Great.
And there, can you see it?
We've got it, Jim. Thank you.
But it's, yeah,
Can you
it's
see
not in
the, screen
presentation
yet?
mode.
Okay, all right, great.
There we go. That looks great.
Okay, so let me walk through this. This is where we are on the schedule. We've had a couple of meetings already. And you'll note on this calendar that today we're at June 14th to look at strategies, tactics, mission, vision. And what we're going to do today is walk through the plan, how it would actually lay out in a printed document. It's going to be in a PowerPoint format, but it'll give you some. This is not the final. We've not applied the graphic touch to it yet. We have a graphic artist lined up to do that. And then following today, the staff is going to solicit customer and public input on it. We also will need to complete some of the background material. I know you've been working on it. I've seen the draft of the commission letter. We need to finalize a few of those things and the photos, and I'm working with Ann on the photos and some of the background information. And then on June the 28th, we originally talked about a meeting, but I think now that'll be the July 5th meeting, and that works for me, to review it in between now and then. As I said, I can, if you'd like, get together with Commissioner Murphy and walk him through it. I will also send this to the commission, send it to Ann and ask Ann to get it to you as well as Commissioner Murphy, so you have some time to read it on your own schedule. Today's topics are to review the material in the plan layout format. Remember, it's obviously won't be a PowerPoint, but it'll give you a sense of what it looks like. Review the goals and strategies and the mission, vision, and values, which we could actually do after you've had a chance to review it, and we can do that at the July meeting and after you've had some public input. Just as background, recall that this is the architecture of the strategic plan, and today we're talking about everything but tactics, a little bit about tactics in the plan, but some of the more granulated details will come through Chris and the staff about actually launching some of the strategies and accomplishing the goals, and that will come at a later date. So I'm going to walk through this in the plan layout, how it might look. Just for you to think about, I like to put these in landscape format, kind of like a coffee table book, something that and sometimes we've even done these where they've been extra sized, like 11 by 17, so they don't get lost in a filing cabinet. But in any case, it needs to be laid out so that it's appealing. The target audiences are your customers, citizens of Whatcom County. So it's got to be something that reads fairly well, and also straightforward enough that folks can follow it. So with that in mind, there's going to be and please, these are not the graphics. These are just placeholders that Ann and I worked on, but it's just an illustration each page as we walk through it. So there'll be a title page. There will be a location set of graphics to locate the PUD on a map so people know where you are. And then the first slide of content, and the other thing too, is you review this, commission, please, you can make comments on order, how they appear in the book or in the plan. There's no right answer to that. I always like to get the mission statement up front. So your current mission statement's on the screen, the second one. The one above it is one that we took a lot of input from you and from the staff and worked on a mission statement to consider. Down below under comparison of keywords, what I did was I listed the keywords along the top, and hopefully you can read that. For example, steward of utility resources. And then down below it, put in the for consideration version and the current version. And let me just walk through those very quickly. In terms of steward of utility resources, the new version expands more, it's more flexible, and it could include broadband. It's not limited to water and energy like your current version is. That the PUD is locally controlled is about the same in both versions. That you're going to pursue natural resource protection. In the top version, it adds the term natural to that. In the current version, it just talks about resources. And I think the new version is a little clearer to the reader. In terms of benefit, the new consideration version on top talks about benefit to the community. The existing one defines that as residents, business, agriculture, and community. So the new one is broader. And then the new one adds economic sustainability to the mission, whereas the old statement, the current statement, doesn't mention economic sustainability. And that refers to the economic sustainability of Greater Whatcom. So as you take this and when I get it to you and you read through it, just keep in mind those keywords and kind of focus on that and give this some thought. Okay.
Jim? I want to bring up here the word resilience. It's
Okay.
not.
We have a lot on that later on.
Okay, but I'm bringing it up just on the keywords, and I'm just wondering, it is a new word that we're using that we haven't used in the past, and that's why I'm bringing it up.
I'll make a note of that, Commissioner, and we'll see how that plays out.
Right, that's all I'm bringing it up.
Okay. Then there'll be a page. There's the message from the commissioner, letter from the commission. I know you're reviewing that. I've read the draft. It's really great. I think we need to have that to get all the commission's comments in and land on a message or a letter to the public from the commission, hopefully by that July 5th meeting. So I know that's in review. This is just a placeholder. Table of contents, that'll be determined later. And then we have a page on strategic planning. I won't go through in detail now, but it talks a little bit about what you've done in the past and what it is, the strategic plan. So when you get this, take a look at that. And then the page that'll be opposite of that would be a little bit about the PUD then and now. And the one thing that when you read through this is that we may want to weave in some discussion of broadband on this page. It's the one thing I noticed that we probably need to do. And I'm making notes. So then if you move on, and just to give you an idea how these might lay out, and of course we've got to work with the graphic artist, but this page, for example, might be on the left and the next page on the right. This is not the final org chart that would go in, but this is about the level of detail that we would put into the org chart, and we could include all three commissioners, your names on that. We include you earlier on by name, and we could add commissioner names on this page too. So food for thought. We Chris and I talked about this. These are the key reports to Chris, and these are the current individuals. A lot of organizations include individual names. I think it's more personal. Some organizations don't do it. You know, I think it makes sense. If you have changes in the future, you can always amend this very easily. So, oops, sorry. Then this is a vision statement. And keep in mind that a vision
Sorry,
statement.
could you go back to that slide? Jim, could you go back to that slide again?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is a vision statement that we took the input on people's thoughts on vision, and Chris and I worked on this one for a while. When you get it, when you look at it and get a quiet time to look at it, I think it's pretty good, but see what you think. It talks about what the future will look like, and this is new in terms of a vision statement. You know, I like the way it reads, but take a look. In the future, our community will be more populous, water will be less abundant, and access will become contentious. Weather will be less predictable and more extreme. Connectivity will be essential, and the PUD will be the preferred provider of affordable, dependable, sustainable, and resilient utility services for all customers. So it's you know, it talks about the future. It's not just painting this totally rosy picture, but it's being realistic about the future. So take a hard look at that one.
It's a good start.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, take a look. And then I have there's two options here. There's option A and B, and the A and B don't mean anything on values. And I won't go through these today, but ask you to take a look at them. When we did the old strategic plan, we had a ton of values, and they were broken up into different categories. There was kind of unanimous consent when we got the input from commission staff that we needed to streamline those. So I always tell clients what values are is who and what you value. So option A, you value partnerships, culture, internal culture, innovation, natural resources, staff, and facilities. In option B, you value people, service, local control, and stewardship. So take a look at those. There's no right or wrong answer to this. I think it's better to be more inclusive than not, but take a look, commission, at this over the next couple of weeks and see what you think. So goals and strategies. So we have a page that would just talk about what goals are and strategies are. This is just a little introductory thing. And then we list the goals and strategies. And as when you get your copy and read through it, this is all the terminology that we have agreed on to date. Not that we can't amend it, but what you might want to look at in close detail is the order they appear in, where they're not numbered, but I put an identifier on them like CS for customer service, just so it's easier to manage for the staff and communicating with you about it in the future. But the one we listed first is customer service. Secondly, we grouped all the water related items about the water resources, the association support, and water supply. So we've grouped those three goals together. And you've seen all of these previously. Then we included broadband, clean industry, and clean and renewable energy together. And then finally, we grouped together community outreach and doing this community impact analysis about the economic impact of the PUD that we've talked about it before, is not an expensive thing to do. And I think it'd give you a great baseline going forward. And then asset management is a goal that emerged from the staff about managing the assets in terms of replacement. And those includes rolling stock, fixed assets, but also very importantly is personnel, and making sure there's a good succession plan. So those are your goals. So when you look at those, go not only the text, but the order. And next we have two pages that are opposite of each other. The first one, which would be on the left, is about tactics, which are, as I mentioned, those more granular details. And this one talks about tactics in terms of two big concepts, environmental resilience and resilience in managing your assets. And I won't go through all of these, but you know, the environmental resilience is the ability and capacity to anticipate, prepare for, and adapt to changing conditions and withstand, respond to, and recover rapidly from disruptions in environmental conditions. And it's about it's that nexus of adaptation and mitigation.
Jim,
Yeah.
Jim,
Yes.
on that slide, I'd like
Yeah.
to be an optimist and make the
Yeah.
overlap of the circles a little larger than that.
Well, Commissioner, that shows my failings as a graphic artist in PowerPoint. I totally agree with you. I struggled to get it done, and I should have mentioned
You
that.
could be right, by the that it could be that difficult to find things that satisfy both, but I'd like to make the slide more optimistic in this regard and show
Yeah,
bigger overlap of those two circles.
I'm totally with you. I did struggle with trying to do that, but so the graphic artist will be able to do that when he gets a hold of it. So.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, eventually that should happen. That's what you suggest.
Totally. Yeah, and I'll make another note of that so that, but that was on my list to do. Then, and then the same thing is true of resilience in managing your assets, proactive planning to ensure the predictable performance of your assets, to avoid disruptions in customer service delivery, and safeguard PUD staff and contractors. And this is the nexus between resistance, you know, about life expectancy of assets and recovery from failure. So this is that sweet spot of managing your assets. And Commissioner Ishmani, I think the same thing applies about the overlap here. So then an acknowledgements page, and sometimes these end up on the very, this is towards the end, but on the very back of these strategic plans. But usually they just, in your current plan, it just states, you know, thanks everybody for weighing in. Chris and I talked about this. This might be a great opportunity for Chris as the general manager to have a personal message here to everybody that contributed to this public input, obviously the commission, but the staff, the PUD attorney and others. And I think it's okay to even name people by name in here, but this is just an early draft that we did as a placeholder.
Yeah, why not up front?
We
Well,
could.
I mean,
We totally could.
you could, but the point is, you know, now you've seen the whole document, and here's our thanks to the folks that created it.
Mhm.
Also, we have a
So-
letter from the commission at the
Up front.
front, and the commission drives
Yeah,
strategic plan.
Sure, sure.
yeah. And
Yeah,
we
I-
don't want any confusion or.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, and Commissioner too, because my initial reaction is put it up front, and then Chris and I talked about it, like he just said, it kind of makes more sense. You've been through it, and hey, thanks for making this happen. Anyways,
Yeah, what Commissioner Grant said too about the bookending on one side, the commission's thanking, and then at the end,
Yeah.
the GM thanking. So
We did,
Yep.
we did go through this several times, Jim and I.
makes sense.
yes. Then we have a page on kind of a go to the website. I don't know what this would say, but it's really about who do you reach out to if you want more information, contact things. And this can be as detailed as we want or as brief as we want. I think it's always a good idea if somebody has a question that you offer them, hey, give us a call, go to this website, send an email, whatever it is, and we'll figure that out. And then finally, this is just a placeholder on formatting. We may have to have an extra page in here or not, just so the formatting works and it's an easy read. And the opposite pages, when you open it, make sense to each other. There's no abruptness between them. So that's generally the plan layout. And then just a reminder that our next session, that will change now to July 5th, something we keep with that. Chris there is after this meeting is going to get some public input, customer input. And I would ask that the commission, and I'll talk to Commissioner Murphy about this, this now needs to be by July 5th, and I'll change this, but review and confirm the draft letter from the commission. Take a look at the goal strategies, the whole layout of the plan, the tactics, basically the entire plan. And I think for July the 5th, we'll be ready to go. I think, Chris, it might be good if we could get some commissioner input before the 5th so we could fold that input into a next version.
Yeah, Jim, I'm thinking that the June 24th date's not a bad date for collecting all the input. Because that gives us a week and a half, 2 weeks to put together. I'm not expecting any surprises, but that's why you ask for people's opinion. You can get surprised. And this gives us the opportunity to incorporate all that.
Well, let's keep that June 24th date for input, and I'll share that with Commissioner Murphy, and then we'll have it. I think when we come back, it'll look generally like we've talked today. I can stop sharing here.
So Jim, one other thing, there's no federal law or state law that requires these strategic plans to be done on a schedule. This is what we've agreed to. So if we end up with some input or observation from people that cause us to push it off, we could do that. I just want to get the strategic plan in place with this timing so that we can use it for the basis for our budget.
You're right on.
So that's kind of the driver here. Just so people know that it's not necessarily an artificial driver and we could push it off, but there's a real reason not to.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And the other thing I just want to share with you is these strategic plans get better with time. This is your first shot out. Well, it's your second shot out, but with this commission, you'll look at it again next year and update it, review it, and it'll just get better with time. So just keep that in mind as you look at it going forward. And the other thing is, I think we want to wait until we've got pretty good consensus on the content before we pull the trigger with the graphic artist, just for the economies of that. We don't want to be changing stuff too much. So if you can be patient enough, then we'll get it back to you at some point in its final look and graphic layout, and then you'll still have another bite at the apple at that point.
So how should we provide feedback before? I think keeping with the June 24th date is great. Is that with you, Jim, or with you, Chris?
Either way works. If you get it to me, I'll get it to Jim right away. Also, you could send it to Ann and she could get it to Jim, or you could just send it to Jim and CC me so I know what you're doing. And
okay, so in writing though is how you prefer to have it, or okay. So you'll get electronic copies of this to us today.
Yeah, I'll get this to Ann today, and then she can distribute it, and then also to Commissioner Murphy, and then because I will. It comes to Chris or it comes to me. We'll confer with each other on it as we work on it after the 24th. So we'll get everything looped in.
Okay.
Good.
So I've got two quick items. One is I just want to acknowledge the fact that, as you said, Chris, that there is quite a bit of language around the word resilience. I want to make sure that as being sensitive to the fact that maybe I'm proposing something new and wanting to make sure that everybody's comfortable with it. I think that if someone was uncomfortable, they would have communicated. But I just want to repeat again to staff and other commissioners that if there's something that rings untrue or is problem with the language of resilience, I'd like to make sure we get that registered too, so we can address that. And that's one thing. So just again, requesting that, there's something that I'm pushing for, but I also want to respect that maybe I don't have the entire picture in my head, of course. So when I ask to make sure we do that, because this is a significant change in the tone of the PUD. And then the second thing is there's something as a PUD that because that's unique to our identity, and that is that particularly so for Whatcom PUD. Our customers are a different subset than the entire county. And we don't explicitly address that in our documentation and policy, but obviously it has an impact. We can't deny the fact that our customers are not the same as the voters. It's uniquely true for Whatcom PUD, I would argue. And it's important to respect that and recognize that we have a unique task in respecting and serving our customers while all at the same time serving the general public. So I don't know how that shows up, but it's just a question to you, Jim, to you, Chris, and to the other commissioners about do we explicitly address that in the strategic plan or not?
So Commissioner, we currently do in two ways, and we could certainly do more. We'd have to talk about that. But the first is the very first goal that we have in there is customer service. That was the first goal. And then the second grouping of goals was water. So I wanted those in that order to recognize that that's our existing business, that's our core. And, you know, strategically, that's the bullseye. And then everything else kind of flows out from that. So that was my attempt to center our current customers in the strategic plan and put them right up front.
Okay. And I'm partially posing the question to myself too. I'll also in reviewing
take a
Jim,
look
the
at it.
documentation and think about how to just, for the purpose of the public and education of the public, make sure that they understand that point. So, and it creates some unique opportunities and challenges. It's neither positive nor negative. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jim, do you have anything else?
No, you know, it's always, you've done a great job of starting to distill these things down. So, and I think when you see it in final print, it'll jump off the page to you. And then just keep in mind that it's something you ought to take a look at every year and just update it. So, yeah, it'd be a good communication piece for the PUD.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Commissioners, I have nothing else on the strategic plan.
Let's take a quick break.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Are you? Do you want to take a break?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Well, Jim, thank you for all your work on this, and Chris and staff that have been involved. So we will get feedback to you by June 24th. And then this will be, we'll have a special meeting on July 5th to begin really finalizing the plan. And you, Chris, will have done customer and community meetings.
That's correct.
by
And I'll
then.
have all that feedback. The other thing is whatever feedback I gather from that, I'll probably shoot out to the three of you and of course to Jim as soon as we get it, just so that you can see it. And then, you know, then the question will be, have we adequately included that in the version that you see in July 5th?
And by the way, that's why I was suggesting to may put the word resilience in that table, just so that when customers do a quick glance, they realize that that's a new term that we're using.
Well, that table was for your information. That wasn't to be included. That was
not your presentation to the customers.
no, that was to give you the compare and contrast of the two different mission statements.
Yeah.
And kind of a checklist if you think that way. So Jim was trying to give you a distilled, you know, here's what's in each one. That's all that table was trying to do.
Okay.
Okay, great. Jim, thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll see you on July 5th.
Take care.
Well,
Bye. Thank you.
The 24th too, right? Or no?
No.
That's just our deadline.
That's
for
a dead-
getting,
okay.
Yeah, feedback.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move on to new business. And the first item under new business is approved professional services agreement with FSC Group.
So this is Annette, and there she is. She's chiming in.
Hi,
Take it away, Annette.
thank you.
Hi.
We had this item in our budget for 21 and also in 22. In 21, we were it was kind of a crazy year, and 22 has proven to kind of follow that lead, but we do need to address this. So we went out for an RFP. We got 2 responses from FCS Group and Raftalis. We reviewed the proposals, we did some interviews, and our recommendation is that we recommend we award the contract to FCS Group. And what the scope of it is they're going to look at our rates. It's a rate study, so look at our if we're recovering our costs. What's kind of driving behind this is that the connection between the Grandview and the industrial water systems, and just wanting to get their take on if that's gonna change the rates or if there's a different way we should be looking at the rate. So that's kind of what is driving behind this, doing it now, even though it's kind of a busy time. Is there any questions on this?
If I can just add, most utilities do a cost of service study, a complete cost of service analysis. They call that a COSA, every 3 to 5 years. And so it's timely, and you need to do that to make sure that you don't have any divergence between what you're collecting and what your costs are and how those costs are distributed among customers.
Well, sorry, you go first. Okay, so one of the things the rate studies are also can do is provide some defense.
Absolutely.
Justification for why rates are evolving.
Yeah.
And that you didn't mention that explicitly, but isn't that part of why we're doing this too? Because we are looking at some rate increases.
Potentially.
This year, or potentially. So it's also needing to provide clear justification for why that's might be necessitated.
That is true. The COSA is usually the basis for any proposed rate changes, whether they're up or down or distributed between classes of customers. There's all kinds of things you can do in rate design.
Are we looking at the rates for our ag customers at all in this?
That's included in our water rates. It's a very small piece of our revenue, but they are included.
In this, and it will be included in this study?
Yes, because it's right now what we're focusing on is both the water utilities. So everything water.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, on the electric side, it's relatively easier. If we had 150 or 200 customers, then we'd be talking about customer classes and subsidies between classes and things like that. And just electric's so much simpler right now.
Okay.
I have no further questions.
Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the professional service agreement with FCS Group.
And I'll second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Annette.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is approved professional services agreement with Electric Reliability Services.
And this is Dwayne, should be
There he is.
online. Yes,
Hi.
excellent.
Hi, Dwayne.
Hey, good
Too
morning.
long, Dwayne. It's good to see you.
Morning.
Yeah, good to see you. So tying in a little bit with Jim's presentation there of keeping our equipment all maintained and reliable. This is a for professional services agreement contract with Electrical Reliability Services, ERS. We looked into a couple different companies. These guys were the ones most qualified. And so what we'll do with them is they'll do some testing and calibration of our equipment out at the refinery during the turnaround, specifically on the Sunday that they take the power out, because there are certain equipment pieces that we just can't test or calibrate while there's power in it. So one day every about 5 years, we get a chance to do this. And so Electric Reliability Services has won our choice for the professional services agreement. So we would like to have commission approve our agreement with them, if that is okay. And then after that, we would move on to a work order if you approve that. And do you have any questions?
Yeah, I'd like to ask some questions. So what is this? What are the different aspects of reliability testing that are done?
They'll calibrate the relays and they'll test the transformers and the switches and the instrumentation. We're going to get very detailed. I might call on Chris or John.
Well, so Commissioner, you do trip testing on the relays and the relay coils. You do dissolved gas on the transformers. And that's all standard stuff that you do. The dissolved gas tells you about the aging of the insulation internal to the transformer. If you have aromatic hydrocarbons building up in the oil, you know that your insulation is degrading. So you pull it. If you find benzene, over the dissolved in there, then you got issues. So those are examples of the kinds of things you do.
So basically you inject the gas, an inert gas, or?
No, you pull an oil sample and you see the gases are breakdown gases from the insulation failing.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when you find them dissolved in the oil, you know that the insulation is breaking down. And it's a normal aging thing with transformers. Under no load, they'll typically begin to gas after 70 years. Under full load, they'll typically begin to gas after 30 years. And if they've had a lot of faults through them, or if there's some problem with their design or construction, they'll gas earlier. So you always want to pull the gas before failure. Failure of transformers is catastrophic and not good.
Is everything that we're doing very standard, very routine, or is there something we're doing that's not standard?
I would say this is all routine and extremely minimal.
Yeah.
If we were designing a maintenance program from the ground up, we probably have a little bit more higher frequency, and perhaps broader testing. So this is something we've kind of backed into over the years, and it's really a fairly minimal, but it's all utility standard stuff. There's nothing extraordinary here.
If we discover something, what's our process for communicating that?
Well, Dwayne will talk to Brian, and Brian will talk to me, and depending on what it is, we may talk to you.
First the customers right away. Yeah.
Well, first we got to find out, does it have any operational impact? If it doesn't, and then does it have any rates impact? And if it doesn't, then we may not talk to customers. We may talk to you.
Great. That's all I have.
I don't have any questions. Do you want to?
I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
To approve the professional services agreement with Electric Reliability Services.
I'll second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thanks, Dwayne. Are you doing the next agenda item, which is approve work order? Okay.
That's to actually do the work.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that next item on the agenda?
Okay, so there's not a lot more to tell about it. This would be then to approve work order 1 for Electric Reliability Services to do the work that we just talked about. Again, we get one day, typically every 5 years, that Phillips does a blackout day. And most of this work will get done then. There is a little work they can do prior to and a little work after. But the biggest impact is when they are out that Sunday. So we would ask Commission to approve the first work order for Electric Reliability Services for $91,120 plus tax, and asks that Chris be able to sign that work order.
I'll make that motion. I'll make the motion to approve work order W01. Is that W01 or W01?
I think it's work order.
Work order 1-06-22.
And I'll second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Dwayne.
Great, thank you.
So Commissioners, the next item up is a delegation of authority. Peter's here to talk about it. I just wanted to say kind of in advance, a lot of this is looking at what's changed in the state around us and what's changed internally. For instance, we never had anything delegated to the broadband manager because we didn't have the position. Now we've got the position, so we've added that in the delegation of authority. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Peter, who's really the expert on this.
Yeah, John prepared a change to the delegation of authority, and this is specifically having to do with non-disclosure agreements. And I'm taking the page now to the that particular section. It's a very minor change, but it does provide, okay, yeah, it's under, starts at page 10 of 12. It's under Public Records Act compliance and non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements. So historically, or previous to this proposed change, there was the language regarding non-disclosure and confidentiality agreements where it said from time to time, potential and or existing customers of the district or other properties. And here's the change, or other parties with whom the district may engage with may seek a confidentiality agreement. So it's recognizing that, I think in this case, maybe it was PSE that was requesting this, I'm not sure.
Yeah, PSE was requesting it, but we also have potential customers in the Cherry Point area who, they've been reluctant to share information up front with us, and we've told them, don't share it with us because, it becomes a public document. This could potentially provide a path for them to shield some proprietary information, and they might not even yet be a customer of ours.
Right, so it expands it to, so it's not just customers, it's recognizing that I think you're running into situations where this is being requested by non-customers, and it grants Chris that authority to sign the non-confidentiality agreement subject to legal review and not necessarily going to the commission specifically each time that's requested. There's some additional language that does provide sort of some a backstop. And you will see that on the next page where it starts with notwithstanding the foregoing. And this now we're on page 11. So it grants that it extends the authority to not just customers, but to others that the PUD may engage with. But then it added additional language, basically everything you see from notwithstanding down to the end of that paragraph. And essentially, it provides a backstop so that Chris and or so it's page 11 of 12. And
Yeah, no, for some reason I don't have page 11 of 12.
oh, you can. I think I know it well enough. I can.
Okay. So my staple packet ended at 10. That's what I was thinking.
But essentially, it provides some protection. Sometimes you get these non-disclosure agreements, and we're in the public sector, so it provides a backstop. So we have a basis to argue against overly broad confidentiality agreements, and it does have the last provision that if there's a real financial exposure related to attorney's fees, that would have to come to the commission as well. So that's in a nutshell what's being changed in the delegation of authority.
So I have some questions about this. The first question, is there anything in this activity of entering into non-disclosure agreement that in any way binds the disclosure or non-disclosure of the commissioner?
Well, typically this
In
is
any way?
the non-disclosure agreement is just to give the background, so my answer makes sense. This is a third party saying we're going to share information with the PUD and because there's some endeavor that's being engaged in, and some partnership, some preliminary discussion, and they want, and so it's the information of the third party that we're talking about here. And so I don't see this as impacting, at least in this context, it does not impact information of the commissioner.
Yeah, I'm thinking about what kind of restrictions this puts on the role of a commission. And that's something I want to think about some more. So I'm not ready to proceed with this today for that reason.
I think this doesn't change anything with regards to the what is discoverable with a commissioner. This is literally to do with third parties. So specifically, it was customers or potential customers that came to us with proprietary information.
Okay, let's talk about
and Puget Sound Energy, because we need information on their polls for the fiber program. And they're not going to give us that information in a format we can use unless we promise not to share it with the world. That's what triggered all of this, has nothing to do with any exposure of information by commissioners. Doesn't protect you any more than you're already protected, it doesn't expose you any more than you're already exposed.
But it could prevent staff from talking to a commissioner about something that's under non-disclosure.
No, because you're fiduciary to the utility as well. So you're bound not to share this information if it's shared with you.
Which is the point, then it is a binding on a commissioner and information that they, and commissioners allowed to share and not share. And so for what this is doing is this is basically allowing the general manager to act solely in terms of disclosure of information. The commission can always adopt a non-disclosure agreement. But the difference here is that they won't happen in a public meeting to adopt a non-disclosure agreement.
Unless
if we
there's
adopt this policy.
significant legal cost exposure. And then I have to bring it back to you.
I want to think about this. Yeah, I want to think about this. And maybe we can have a follow-up conversation.
Are there any, I don't know, are there any specific questions that I could maybe address right now?
Is there something urgent about this?
We're trying to get information from Puget Sound Energy to route fiber for our new grant applications. So yes, there's some urgency around this.
Like how urgent would being able to resolve this by the next meeting be a problem?
That would be close. It would be a problem shortly after that.
Yeah, well, I commit to make it a priority to resolve all of my concerns by then.
Okay.
I mean, the other option is specific to that non-disclosure agreement. If you don't want to, and you could just do a motion to authorize it in that specific case. That's another.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I'm fine with doing that. Would that help? That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Peter.
I mean, administratively, then every time somebody comes to me, I need to come
I'm
back to
still open
you.
to this discussion. I'm not saying we're tabling this. I'm just saying I need some time to think about it. But with the time constraints with this particular entity that we're working with, we could make an approval for an NDA with that particular entity today so that there's no time constraint.
Except that we don't have an NDA for you to approve in hand.
Okay.
I mean, Andrews presumably has one right now, but it has not been approved by legal staff.
Yeah, my concerns are not on the specific example that you raised. There would have to do with other examples that we can talk about.
I would suggest that you talk to counsel offline
Yeah.
and see if he can satisfy your concerns.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we're gonna move on then to the next item. Approve resolution number 817, amendment to policy for employee compensation for administrative employees. Is this you, Chris?
It is. So we're proposing to hire a essentially a SCADA technician, and we needed to change a few things in our employment practices in order to do that, and also get your permission to fill this position. It was in last year's budget, and we are now proceeding to, after today, what we will be doing is going out advertising and recruiting. So this job, it fulfills a number of requirements that we've got around succession planning and also workload. Workload's gone up, and we've got, it's going to continue to go up. Every time I read a new cyber threat, I know, my apologies to our IT guys, to Paul and Mike, and we just got to make sure that they're backed up and covered. So that's part of it. And then part of it is that none of us are getting any younger, and we do just have to bring new people in the organization from time to time to back others up.
Yeah, I think that's great. And you said, I mean, the SCADA, but obviously the roles and responsibilities of this person will be beyond just the SCADA.
Yeah, I don't think anybody at the PUD wears a single hat. It's just not, it's not our business model.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't have any.
I don't have any questions. Chris and I talked about it yesterday.
So is that resolution 817?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to approve resolution 817, to amend the policy for employee compensation to create a new administrative employee.
And I'll second. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Commission.
And then the last item on the agenda is approve employee contract with Steve Joke.
So just a little background here. Steve's employment is transitioning from, an active employee to someone who's more of a part-time employee. We've explored a number of different ways to make use of his expertise over time. And it seems the best way to make use of that is to have him as a part-time employee. The challenge that we have is how do you have him as a part-time employee and how do we honor all of the other commitments we've made to him, many financial for the longevity that he gave us and for years and years of good service. So I've been working on a contract that does just that. It essentially monetizes all of the past obligations and then spreads them out over 3 years, splits them up into 36 payments. And then at the same time allows us to retain Steve as a part-time employee. The contract itself was put together really over the last few weeks and just got it finalized on Friday and cleaned up yesterday, and I'm locking it on today. So with that, I'd like to just hand out copies of it. This is the clean copy.
Same formatting.
So this agreement has been extensively reviewed with, of course, Steve, myself, and Peter and John Sitkin over in the legal department. And I'm submitting it for your consideration.
From my perspective, the fact that you and Steve agreed to it is my primary. I mean, you're looking out for the PUD. Steve is making sure that he's taken care of. I don't need to review this in detail because it has checks and balances on it. I don't have any questions about this agreement.
And I don't know. And this is one of those ones where Mike has worked with Steve for so long. It might be advantageous for him to just take a glance at this and maybe you guys vote on it next time.
I would prefer to wait just because this is the first time I've looked at
Yes,
the
I
contract
agree,
and I
yeah.
would like to.
I will go
review
ahead and
it.
review it, yeah.
So I think this should be a quick one on the next agenda, but I would feel more comfortable moving it to the next meeting.
No
under old
urgency on
business.
anything here?
Excuse me.
No urgency on anything here?
Yeah, there's some urgency, but Steve transitions on July 1st, so we need to get payroll lined up. But
So we
by
can-
next meeting is
Steve,
fine.
is the 21st okay with you?
This is the 28th.
Our next, sorry,
Yeah.
2 weeks from now, whenever the 2 weeks from now is.
Yeah, I just need some finality in time. If the decision would not to be extending the contract or amending the contract and extending it, I need to make some decisions in terms of what tax ramifications would be if I am fully terminated on June 30th, so.
Yeah, that's not the intention at all. So I don't think that's it, just reviewing the contract to make sure that there's no minor issues.
You all right with that, Steve?
Yes, I'm fine.
Okay, so we have 2 items that are going to be under old business for our next meeting. The delegation of authority and the contract with Steve Joke. And with that, let's move on to the general manager's report.
I only have, 2 items really. One, next commission meeting, I will be on a pre-planned trip, so I won't be able to attend. Brian will be here and of course Steve will be backing him up still. So we're in good shape there. The second thing is that the public records request is now over $13,000. So charges continue to mount on that. I don't know how far up it's going to go. We're pretty far along in the legal vetting. So the last month, it's only gone up about $1,000, but that's I think reflective on how much time is being spent on it as opposed to how much work is getting done out of the whole pile. But I think we're getting close to the end.
Okay.
And that's it for my report.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Dashmani, do you want to do your commissioner report?
Sure. I mentioned that under broadband related conversations that I had. Purely on my own behalf, I attended the U.S. Department last week on Tuesday and Wednesday. And this is mostly as an FYI to the commission. I attended the Department of Energy Hydrogen and Merit Review. Just very much wanting to focus on understanding what the status of hydrogen related technology is. They talked about pipelines, distribution, techniques for production of hydrogen. And there's a very vibrant program underway. And they are looking at many of the questions that people have on the production and utilization of hydrogen in the energy infrastructure. I think there's probably a valuable piece of information that are being produced over the next few years that be relevant to the projects that we're considering in collaboration with our customers relating to hydrogen. I think that that's a good thing. It's great to see there's actually relevant research happening to look at the issues around reliability. As a summary, hydrogen distribution through the pipeline system or a variety of different systems. There are now ample pathways for doing so in a way that we understand its impacts to durability and reliability. So I'm confident that there is already and will continue to be a wealth of information to keep hydrogen distribution safe, first and foremost. That's good news. Another area which is getting extensive attention is how to maximize efficiency of hydrogen production through the most high priority, I would suppose, pathways, which is the electrolyzer pathway. But now there are several pathways being looked at for production of hydrogen, which are potentially carbon neutral from fossil sources, meaning ways of fixing the carbon from methane in the process of producing hydrogen, which are very intriguing. I would definitely not call those implementation ready. And I'm using a specific term, by the way, that's a term of art for the technology industry. And what that means is basically something that's been costed, that's been prototyped, and it's ready for commercial deployment. So that's what implementation ready means. So there's nothing in that regard, but there's lots of interesting research happening on the subject of hydrogen, which to me is exciting and hopeful. I would like to point out there's an area that's being neglected, and this is less relevant to the PUD, but is relevant to the state as a whole. And that there is being neglected is the impacts of hydrogen distribution and to retail customers. Its impact on everything from gas stoves to home furnaces that are users of hydrogen. It is being not currently researched by any party affiliated through Department of Energy funding, at least. I had a follow-up conversation since our conversation, Chris, with NREL, and they acknowledge that this is a problem. It's a hole. And reason it's an important hole is even though we're more of an industrial utility, if hydrogen gets put in the pipeline, and if it shows up at people's homes, even in a modest portion, I know from my prior experience with automotive powertrain that it affects the combustion properties of the mixed fuel, and that mixed fuel combustion ends up producing substantially more NOx emissions, which why that's relevant is because that means 300 times the potency as a greenhouse gas of carbon. So whatever benefit you might be getting by substituting hydrogen into the pipeline, you more than erase by what happens in terms of combustion in your home furnace or your gas stove or your gas dryer. So this is something that needs attention. And there's very little funded research. So, I just wanted to bring it up, and that's why I've been cautious about state level legislation promoting hydrogen infrastructure without having this issue addressed. And currently nobody at the state level is addressing it either. So just, as a commissioner, we all know specific things, and I wanted to share that with the commission, and something that I have expertise in, and also I'm concerned about. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that at our last commission meeting, we talked about our commission's efforts to have constructive influence on PUD as it relates to energy policy. I was asked to provide some constructive input to Commissioner Grant. A year later, I don't know what happened with that input, or if that impacted the letter that you sent to George, but I'd like to hear about that. And also in relation to that, I'm feeling that I might be able to serve the commission better by becoming more involved on the energy front, both in the Energy Committee and then at involvement with what am I forgetting? Out of Richland. Energy Northwest. More involved in Energy Northwest. I'd like to wait till Commissioner Murphy is here, but I think our commission, particularly Commissioner Grant, our GM, and myself, have a lot to offer the community because we all have kind of different aspects of energy background that I think are very complementary. Probably not so much overlap between us, which is actually a good thing. But thinking about how to be creative so that we can assist each other's in having a policy impact. I think that, like one of the things I'm considering is now what's happened at Wapuda is that the person who was elected to be the chair of the Energy Committee, Jane, has opted to take the position as Secretary of Wapuda, which puts her in our line for presidency, which means that she's no longer now in the role of president. So a chair of the Energy Committee. So they're going to have to identify a new
I thought
person.
Steve Taylor was elected.
That would have to happen at the July meeting.
What was the election they did in April
That was for chair and vice chair.
of the Energy Committee?
Yeah.
So isn't Steve the chair now?
So then I think it's quite like Steve. So then the vice chair position becomes open.
Mm-hmm.
And and I'd like to know on that subject if you're interested in running for vice chair. If not, I'd like to run, but I can't run for vice chair if I'm not Whatcom PUD's representative on the Energy Committee.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's another issue I'd like. So first is about the letter to George Kahn. I'd like to hear back on. And the second thing is what do we do about the Energy Committee, and when Commissioner Murphy's back, I'd like to raise the issue on Energy Northwest.
Okay.
So
Like taking over his role on
Yes,
Energy Northwest?
yeah, potentially.
Okay. Well, are you done with your?
I'm done,
Okay. In my commissioner report, I did send my letter to George, since the outcome of our discussion was that it was just going to come from me. And
Okay,
I did see your edits and I made a few changes, but you know, since it was coming from me.
yeah,
So, and Chris, I was copied on, you were copied on that. So
Yes.
if you want, he can forward it to you.
yeah, please.
I did have a conversation with Jane Van Dyke about the Energy Policy Committee and forwarded both our commission letter that we responded to on question 1, as well as my responses, and she was quite interested in that. Because Clark has come out in the last legislative session to be more supportive on electrification policy than
Then they work.
Wapouta.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they have their own lobbyist. And so, you know, she kind of shared my concerns related to Wapouta's coming out as opposed on a lot of issues related to energy. And, you know, just, I think she's been in the PUD world for a while, so kind of getting some of her input on how to disagree with Wapouta. And really, you know, she said every PUD should voice their opinion on things and come out as opposed and even testify on issues in a way that is different than Wapouta if you feel like that best represents your district. So that was a good conversation with her. And I asked her about this vice chair question. And I think you're right that in July, there will be, I think the vice chair role is open. If that's a role that you want, then we could talk about me switching roles.
According to Nicholas, that's in the rules of Nicholas Garcia.
Mhm.
The rules are you can't run for an office if you're not the PUD's designate for the chair position.
Okay. I would probably not be running for vice chair of that committee for this year. So if that's something you want to do, then we could see how the election goes. And then, I don't know, I guess once you're on it, you're on it, but I think either way, I would still continue to attend, much like you've been doing. So you could just be the official committee person.
Okay, and I think what you shared about Commissioner Van Dyke is huge for me, because there are 2 big dogs in Wapouta, and it's Clark and Chelan.
And Grant.
Okay, and as a result of that, to get the support of Clark is very beneficial.
Well, and she was speaking for herself, not for her commission, but I think that there's gonna be, I mean, I'm also very interested in the energy committee. I think that this next legislative session is gonna be interesting with the conversations we're having at the association. But I want to support you in running for the vice chair position. So let's do what needs to happen.
Okay.
To make that happen.
Okay.
And I think we can figure out the Energy Northwest situation going forward, but
So if I can make a suggestion.
yeah.
At the beginning of the year, each one of you guys, well, the 3 of you decide how these roles are split up, right?
Mhm.
So I think at any time you can change that by, order of the commission. and there are two of you and the two of you agree, I don't necessarily think you need to wait for Mike for that particular one. If you just want to swap.
Yeah.
I think you could do that today, and I don't think that anybody'd be too upset about it, and you just choose to do it, and then Atul would be the voting member on the July 14th meeting, or whenever the next energy subcommittee meeting is.
Right, and I
It's
could,
14th or
I could
15th.
start calling around and make sure I got support for it.
Right, okay, because you have to campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I don't know if I'll be there. I'm hoping, I was just trying to see if I can join remotely.
Yeah, they
and
have
I'm-
they'll have a remote option.
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, then I mean, I was planning to join remotely, but should we just make a motion right now or?
I think you should.
Okay,
I think that would be, because then it'd be clean. Then Atul would be our delegate, our voting delegate in that meeting. And then he'd be eligible to run.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
so,
I'll make that motion to substitute, and you would be the alternate, right?
sure,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, to move me to the prime position, for representative of Whatcom PUD at the Energy Committee, and then for you to be the alternate.
okay. I'll second that. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So then if you're the if you're the vice chair, then I can't be on the committee next year,
Not as a voting member.
not as a voting member. Okay,
And you can certainly attend all the meetings.
okay. Okay,
Is that's a rule too, is it? That if someone's in a chair position, that the other person can't be, okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Well, I
otherwise it
mean,
would be
the
too-
chair and vice chair are voting
Yeah,
positions.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay. Well, best of luck to you. With your campaign.
Yeah, thank you.
So I also heard from Gary Arsenault, the Waputa president. He wants to come he's trying to visit all the PUDs in the state in person this year. So he was hoping to come and visit us on October 11th. Which nobody has any issues with that. Is that
That's fine.
okay? I'll let him know that he can come. I also had a meeting with Nancy Hirsch to talk about Intalco and the Lower Snake River dams and BPA and electrification policy at Waputa and a number of things. She's the executive director of the Northwest Energy Coalition. I got Chris and Nancy in touch just so that they have each other's contact information. And again, she's been really trying to help. She's been involved in the Intalco deal or trying to encourage BPA to help that deal go through. And so, and then, I mentioned the COG meeting and in my broadband update, and then, have just been in close touch with Chris over the last few weeks on a number of different issues. And Andrew, and have been working on the commission letter for the strategic plan. So those are kind of the key things I've been up to. Nothing else to report. So that moves us into public comment.
We didn't get the general GM. Did we get?
we
you?
did.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
I
got
did.
it, yeah. Sorry.
You didn't leave me out, Commissioner.
Okay.
Any public comment today? Just wait another minute. Was there?
I
there
don't
any-
see any.
Okay. Well, then, not seeing any hands raised, we will close public comment. And then anything else today for the good of the order?
You don't have
I
a
do
last
not.
minute to our executive session, or anything, Peter? That's good.
Well, thank you all for joining our meeting today. The meeting is closed.
Thank you.